a journey to the colorful history of the West Florida Republic. The West Florida Republic was a piece of contested land left out by the Louisiana Purchase in an area called the Florida Parishes. The Republic of West Florida was founded on September 26, 1810 by John Hunter Johnson, John Mills, William Barrow, and John Ray.
And so in the Treaty of 1763, the Treaty of Paris, at the end of the French and Indian War, Louisiana territory went to Spain. All of this territory went to Spain, except the Isle of Orleans. England obtained the province that they named and obtained East Florida and West Florida. In 1799, Spain, under Galvez, began taking over the forts in Pensacola, Mobile, and he went up the Mississippi River, and Natchez is about right there. And so the Spain had all of those forts. But they did not have the Isle of Orleans, but they had from Mobile and Pensacola on up to the Mississippi. Well, that made things a little more confusing. In 1800, at the Treaty of El Defonso, now that was a little-known treaty, France regained control of all of Louisiana. Well, what happened about the parishes of West and East Feliciana, St. Helena, Tangipahoa, Washington, Livingston, and East Baton Rouge north of Firemanchac? All of that territory became disputed territory. Who owned it? Was it part of France? Well, no. France had given that up some while ago to the English, who had all this. Did the English have it? No. Spain had just conquered those forts at Mobile and Pensacola. So this was a lot of unrest here in our parish in particular, and all of the West Florida parishes.
There were several efforts to break this area away from Spanish colonial rule early in the development. It started actually in 1804 in what's called the Kemper Rising, where a group of men came across from the Mississippi Territory, got some of the planters in this area where we're standing right here in the Felicianas, tried to storm the Spanish fort down at Baton Rouge. They went down, they shot at each other for a while. They realized they couldn't take the fort because they didn't have cannon, and the Spanish did have cannon in the fort, and as a result they went back home. Things settled down for a while, and then again, in 1809, things began stirring up again. And they talked to the governor, de Lassos was his name, and they said, now that France has taken control of the Spanish government, we want to help you out by helping to govern this territory. And so clandestinely, meaning secretly, they were kind of trying to take authority away from the Spanish. Well, de Lassos figured that out, and so he decides, I've got to act. So he writes a letter through a man, William Cooper, and sends it out to him to send to the governor, the over-governor in Pensacola, Florida, whose name was Vicente Folk. And in that letter, he urges Governor Folk to come to my aid immediately in a famous letter. He said, come with troops, come with warships. They're in rebellion. They're going to rise against Spanish authority. A patrol from the planters who were up in this area, they were calling themselves the Conventionists because they were meeting as a convention to try to allegedly help Spain govern the area, as we said, captured the man carrying that letter. And when they read the letter, they realized that the governor had been lying to him and that he was trying to get an army to crush their effort. And as a result, on the September 22nd, 1810, people gathered right down here, just about quarter of a mile from where we're standing right now in Bayou Sara. Then they moved out to one of the plantations in the area, and they said, we've got to act immediately before Spanish troops get here. So they joined up, they sent word out all across the Florida parishes, and they began to concentrate right outside Baton Rouge that night into the early morning hours of September 23rd. And men began coming from everywhere. One group from Springfield, which is a long way from Baton Rouge, ran all the way that night. 44 men carrying their guns and equipment and everything. They ran all night long and got there. The Bayou Sara Dragoons, y'all are familiar with Bayou Sara, which is the town that adjoins St. Francisville right here. They met up with them. Other contingents came in from St. Helena Parish and other areas. And shortly before dawn, they made the decision to attack the fort. And they couldn't attack the fort frontally because, again, the Spanish had lots of cannon, and that would have torn them apart. So what they did is a Piney Woods horseman, as they called him, said, "I know how we can get in that fort." And they were like, "Okay, how do we do it?" He said, "There's a gap within the walls of the fort where the dairy cows go in each morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix in with the dairy cows." So the men crouched down with the dairy cows, and they got in with them. And as the dairy cows came in, they came in beside them and everything. And the Spanish didn't even notice them, so that they were able to get inside the fort, form up in a formation, in a firing formation, and suddenly one of the officers saw them, and he went running across the courtyard yelling, "Alerte, alerte," calling out the Spanish troops. And as they began filing out and everything, he yelled, "Fuego!" And that, of course, is the Spanish word for fire. And before they could react to his order, though, the West Florida rebels fired, and they killed him, who was the officer in charge of the fort, and hit a couple of the other Spanish soldiers. Realizing they were outgunned and outmaneuvered, the rest of the Spanish threw down their guns and put up their hands, and they tore down the Spanish flag and raised the original Lone Star flag over the original Lone Star Republic, which was right here. Texas stole it from us a couple of decades later. Many of the men that were involved in the revolt here actually went out and participated in the Texas revolt, and that's how the Lone Star flag ended up out there. But just because they had taken the fort at Baton Rouge didn't mean the revolt was over, because all of the rest of the Florida parishes, and even all the way over to Mobile, Alabama, and Pensacola, Florida, were part of West Florida. So they had to deal with that area too. And word began coming into them where they were meeting. Does anybody, y'all know where they were meeting, huh? Right in the proximity of where we're standing right now. They set up the convention because, as you said, St. Francisville was the capital, and they said, we've got to move before they come with an army and crush us. So they put together an army under General Philemon Thomas, and they told him to advance across West Florida and subdue any opposition. And the first place they targeted was the area along the Comite River, which is not far from here, and there they encountered a man named Michael Jones. And he was known as that damned old Tory because he had been a very famous Revolutionary War fighter. He fought for the British, and now he was down here in West Florida. Jones was gathering men to support the Spanish. You may say, well, why would anybody support the Spanish? Well, there were a lot of reasons. For one thing, the Spanish, when you settled here, they gave you big pieces of land, sometimes as much as 640 acres, and that's a lot. They also didn't have any type of police force or anything, so they didn't mess with you at all. They let you live your life just as you wanted to. Even better, they didn't charge you any taxes. So think about that. You got 640 acres of land. Nobody told you what to do. You didn't have to pay any taxes. A lot of people were, hey, these Spanish aren't too bad. And Jones was one of them. And he had gathered a lot of men, and they were there at the Comite River. But when Thomas's army showed up, and they showed how strong his rebel army was, Jones reluctantly gives up and signs the Declaration of Independence. Some of the other men in St. Helena Parish who were supporting the Spanish as well fled when they heard that. But one man named William Cooper was organizing men at Springfield, and there they built a fort, and they're building that fort to wait for Governor Folk to get there with his army from Pensacola. So Thomas and his rebel army go for Springfield, and there they said, we're going to make an example of them. So when they arrived and found the pro-Spanish men that were still there, they burned their property, they slaughtered all their livestock, they burned their crops, and some of them they even murdered. Okay, one man, they burned him alive. In the Spanish documents say they put fire on him and burned him alive. And what they were doing was they were setting an example. We're not messing around with this anymore. We are in charge here now, and you either accept it or get out. Once they had done that, it secured the area from the Pearl River, which is way over near Washington and St. Tammany Parish, all the way over here to the Mississippi River as part of the West Florida Republic. And they even sent an army out to Mobile to try to bring that area into part of the Republic. But while the army was out there trying to take Mobile, a man named William C.C. Claiborne was coming down from Virginia into the Mississippi Territory with a very powerful American army, because the Americans were saying, we can't let that little republic there exist on its own. The British may come in and take it, the Spanish may come back, the French may even come in. So they send this army, but Claiborne's worried because he hears word that the West Florida rebels will fight. So he calls up the entire Mississippi Territorial Militia. He gets the Army garrison at Point Capay, and he even brings down a 5-gunboat flotilla. And they all come here, right here, and they get right across the river over there in Point Capay Parish, and Claiborne sends a letter across. He tells them, I've got a powerful army, I've got a gunboat flotilla, how are you going to receive me over there? And the response was, some people may want to put up a fight, but seeing the power you've got, most of them are going to give up the game, okay? So when Claiborne comes across the river, the people over here reluctantly lowered the Lone Star flag, and everybody cheered right here in the spot where we're standing right here now, and they raised the American flag. But now word reached Claiborne that at Baton Rouge, at the fort, the president of the Republic, Full War Skipwith, had said, I will die to defend the flag. He said, even if I've only got 20 men, I will shed the last drop of my blood here for the Lone Star flag. So he's down there at the fort, and so Claiborne begins moving down with his army against them. And it was rumored that Skipwith had more than 650 men coming to his aid. So Claiborne says, I've got to move quickly. So he sends the gunboat flotilla down there, and when Skipwith woke up the next morning, what he found was the fort was surrounded by a powerful American army, and just off in the river there, cannon were trained on the fort from the gunboat flotilla. In other words, it was going to be a massacre. And so Skipwith says, I want two things. I want all the men that are in this fort that may have been deserters from other armies or that may have had any types of grievances or complaints against the United States to be forgiven. Claiborne said, okay. And he said, second thing, I want the Lone Star flag to be lowered with honor and treated with respect. And Claiborne said, okay. And on those terms, 74 days after the nation had been proclaimed, they lowered the Lone Star flag, and that ended the Republic of West Florida.
Now on the 24th of October, the convention met in Baton Rouge and adopted a constitution based on the United States Constitution. It elected an executive committee of 5 men, and they were to handle all the details of the bills and all of that for the convention. And those men were John Hunter Johnson, John Mills, Philip Hickey, John Morgan, and William Barrow. And they made the St. Francisville headquarters, their headquarters, the hotel their headquarters. They wished to reduce the Spanish held Mobile and Pensacola, and authorized Philemon Thomas to gather a force of 618 militia for instant service to any part of the territory. And St. Francisville was named the capital of the Republic of West Florida.
Because this region was not included in the Louisiana Purchase, okay? And remember we were talking about that a little bit a minute ago. In 1803, when Thomas Jefferson sent his ministers there to negotiate in Europe and say, we want to buy Louisiana, he said, but what I really want you to get is the Isle of Orleans and West Florida. Because if you could get West Florida, it meant the Americans had control of the entire length of the east bank of the Mississippi River, okay? So that's what he wanted. When his ministers came back, they said, we got the Isle of Orleans, we got all that other territory, which makes up so many states out in the Midwest and everything, and in the Rocky Mountain area and everything that was the Louisiana Purchase, but we couldn't get one area, and that was West Florida, because this region was considered so strategically significant that they refused to part with it. And as a result, people in this area broke into 3 factions. One group that said, we're disappointed, we weren't a part of the Louisiana Purchase. Another group that said, wait a minute, we want to remain a part of Spanish territory, and we talked about why, because the Spanish didn't give any taxes, they gave you land, etc. And finally, a group that said, wait, let's form our own independent nation. And so all of those groups came together in all this chaotic cauldron of events that led to that dramatic night of September 22nd and into September 23rd, 1810.
Now, on the 19th of November, 1810, the new government for the West Florida Republic met in the St. Francisville Hotel. It was here that Full War Skipwith was elected governor of the Republic of West Florida and proceeded to govern.
That was a kind of obvious choice. Most of the support, the most intense support for the West Florida Revolt came here. In most of the other areas of the Florida parishes, even when you get down around Baton Rouge and things, loyalties were very divided. Here in St. Francisville and Bayou Sara area right here, it was overwhelming support for the revolt. Plus, they were further away from the Spanish garrison. The Spanish garrison was down there at Baton Rouge and then over at Pensacola, so it was a safe place to put it. Plus, look at how St. Francisville is situated. Up on bluffs above the river, it could be easily defended. So all of those things came together to make this a perfect choice for putting it here.
I'm David Norwood, and I'm a descendant of William Barrow. My grandmother on my daddy's side of the family was a Barrow, and her great-great-grandfather was William Barrow, who was in the Republic Rebellion. And when I was a little boy, I was younger than you, I knew all about the Republic because that was part of my family's conversations. This was back before television, so all the men folks sat on the porch and talked about the rebellion like LSU football back in those days. And so I knew all about the rebellion. So when I heard Dr. Hyde say that they were going to have a bicentennial celebration, I immediately volunteered. And since St. Francisville was the capital of the Republic, I got all excited about it. And I wanted to do a park or something, and I got everybody to help me do that. That's how I got involved. They told me that the guys from Bayou Sara had a cavalry, you know, guys on horseback, and they found out that the Spanish had an entrance on the riverside of the fort in Baton Rouge that let the cows in the morning. So the people at the Historic Society asked me to depict that in a drawing. So I drew the cows coming in the Cow's Gate with the Bayou Sara cavalry coming in holding the blue flag with the white star. The color of the flag, we have always flown a flag that's available, and that's the blue flag with the white star. And somewhere back in history, it's written that it was an azure blue rather than dark blue. So when Dr. Hyde and the commission decided to, hey, we have to be unique, so we decided to go back to what they said the color was. But there was controversy on that because we had been flying a dark blue flag. But and the argument was, and it's a good argument, that indigo was a crop here at the time of the rebellion. So they had plenty of blue dye. And indigo is a darker blue. It makes, you can pull the indigo out quick and it's a lighter blue. So it's still a good argument. But there are people here that have been flying the blue flag, the dark blue flag for years. And so, and it's a cheap flag, whereas the blue flag, the light blue flag is like $30, where this flag is $14. So, and you're not going to tell everybody here. I told Dr. Hyde that. I said, you know, we can't make everybody buy a new flag, you know. So he accepted that. He's a good sport. Great.